Do 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 do. Josh's Order Corner.
That's me. All right, so we're back. Not long ago we did an unboxing video for a couple of books that we received from William freaking Perry. It's actually William R. Perry, but for whatever reason, it's like how they do freaking and then like parentheses around the first letter so you don't say it. So that's what the R stands for, is Reekin and freaking. Uh, And that, friends, is why my comedy career will never take off. But here we are. This is going to be episode 2 of Josh's Corner Book Talk, where we're going to talk about these novellas, if you will. There's a lot of debate over what makes a novella versus a short story. I love the word novella, so that's what we're going to call these. These are what we received from William Perry, Bill Perry, stuntman extraordinaire. And we already did the unboxing on it, so I'll link that at the end of this so you can see what that's all about. But By His Hand and Out of His Mind are the two stories that were written by Bill. So I'm going to read you the little synopsis on the back of both of them, and then we're going to talk about them. So there's going to be spoilers. If you don't want these to be spoiled, hit the like button and then go about your day and come back after you read them. I highly encourage you to read them. Check the links down below. I'm going to show you where you can find these. By His Hand. It began when Bill's hands began to cramp in odd and painful grips each morning. Soon he finds himself helpless as his body grows progressively more numb each day. His illness is a medical mystery. Although his mind is sharp and active, he can only watch as he inexplicably withers and decays into complete paralysis. Awakening on his 40th day in the hospital, his family and friends from church find that he is miraculously cured. Bill's hands and limbs have begun to move and feel, but they do so with a life all of their own. Bill is still trapped defenseless within his own body. Whatever is controlling his actions has a dark and terrifying intent, yet no one sees beyond his miraculous healing. In the follow up, Out of His Mind, 1 year has passed since a string of vicious murders shocked the quiet block of a small suburban street. While deep scars remain for the survivors, William Parson lays in his hospital bed, tormented by the murders committed by his hand, but not of his will. Completely paralyzed, he has no means to communicate. Thought to be in a vegetative state and utterly despised, he is deprived of music, books, movies, or even a single soul to speak to him. Was he possessed? Did he just snap? At least now he can't hurt anyone ever again, unless he was telling the truth. So there you go. Now, I have some notes right here on the phone. Boop. And we're going to talk about it. Now, it's funny because I had a conversation with Bill, and he was saying that he doesn't love things that are too graphic and too like bloody and cringe, like, I don't know, shock inducing. And then I read these stories and I was like, bro, what do you mean? Because some of the stuff he wrote in here, some of the descriptions to some of the activities that happen were vile in a great way. I mean that as a compliment. But boy, oh boy, was I just like sitting there reading the details that he wrote onto the page. And I was like, this is disgusting. This is gross. But in a good way. A lot of times with movies, it's overdone. Oh boy, I'm gonna say it. I don't love Terrifier because I just feel like it's overdone. Like it's too much. And with reading it, you can kind of turn that off a little bit because you're using your mind to picture these things, so you get the details and you can censor it yourself, right? When we read By His Hand, I love how the imagery of the story really like aligns with the cover. With the inability to control his movements, control his hands, they start realizing that he's actually speaking sign language, which I thought was really cool. He thought they were just spasms, but it ended up being sign language. So it was a really cool way to tie communication of this demonic entity into real life. Now, it didn't go very far, with that thought, but there was someone at the church who recognized some of the gestures that he was making. But just imagine, like, losing all of your feeling, basically being in a coma, like a coma state, and as you start to gain it back, you have no control. So you're losing all your muscles, uh, atrophy setting in, medical results come back clear, so no one can figure out. You're helpless. Like, you have no control over what's going on. Doctors can't give you any clear answer. There's a terror just in that alone. But then as you start to be able to move, getting out of that kind of shell state, it's not your movements, it's not your actions. You just live inside of this shell to witness everything happening through your body. Everyone you know is so stoked to see you walking around and back at it, living life, that they don't realize that there's things that are different now. The way you're acting doesn't really align with who you were before. And because of being able to just slip into that body and take over, you now have the ability to be a ruthless, cold-blooded killer. You can test what you can get away with, as the entity does, him, as he does in the church. And then slowly he just goes out of control. The climax really comes there. There's a murder that's very close to the character. And when he's grieving, grieving a loss, people come to try to cheer him up and make him feel better, and then he strikes big and goes after everyone that's there in a very very good way. It was very well written. Now, Out of His Mind picks up, as it said on the back, a year later. So a year has passed. The town is still reeling from what happened, what he did, and he is still stuck inside his body, knowing what he did, wishing for an escape, having no control, and realizing like how many people he has killed. No one is there for him except for one member of his congregation. But the only way that he had to communicate, since you can't move, based on, I mean, it's not even the same medical issue, a different issue occurred where the way that the first book ends, I know I said there'd be spoilers, but whatever, where he tried to take his own life because of what he did. And now in the second story, Out of His Mind, he's kind of dealing with the consequences of those actions that he put himself through by trying to take his own life. So his only way to communicate is through a machine that reads his eye movements and helps type out. And that's kind of how this book's written, is through that lens. It's really interesting the way that it plays into it. Opti-key transcripts are how the book is done, just like you see there. So as you're reading it, you're supposed to be understanding that what you're reading is based on the eye movements of William as he's in his hospital bed. Now, it doesn't always work out because there's a lot of descriptors as to what's happening around him, not just communication. So kind of disconnects you from that experience a little bit, but it's still well done. It still was a great idea and approach on that. When people think you've killed, maybe don't admit your fantasies about hurting other people. That is one thing that I had as feedback in here, for the character, not for the author. Like, if people think that you killed, you really can't elaborate on wanting to hurt others, because that's just gonna make you look even more guilty. Now, there was a really fun like scene in the novel, or in the story, where this individual comes in and kind of interviews Bill as he's in the hospital, and then you find out that it's someone trying to gain permission to create a Halloween costume and a movie based on what has happened. And it was just an interesting nod to like Fun World, who makes these scream masks behind me here. I love that he incorporated that. Like, it's kind of just a if you know, you know kind of nod to the industry. It was really cool. Now, these novellas, these short stories, I do recommend them. I think that if you just want a quick read, it's perfect. I am very intrigued by what happens when you're in a coma, what happens when your body is shut down like that, where your mind goes. Can you still think? Are you still present in your body but trapped? So it really played into some of those thoughts that I have The violence to it, like I said, it gets pretty violent. It gets pretty rough, especially for a guy who says he's not a guy who says he's pretty squeamish. But it's solid. I really recommend it. And if you're able to read a book that makes you kind of cringe and go ew, that's a good thing, right? It's good that someone's words can make you react like that. You don't have to see it on the screen. You can picture it in your own mind. And again, censor it as much as you need to as you go through it. There will be a link down below on where you can find these. I encourage you to pick up not one, but both. You need to read them together so you get the full story. And follow William R. Perry on his socials. He does a lot of cons, a lot of events. So it's going to be easy for you to cross paths with him and get this book signed. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your suggestions. If this is something you want to read, I encourage you, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. You can find me on various socials, link trees down below. Next up, we're going to be talking about Deliverance by James Dickey. I'm sure you've seen the movie. I'm sure you know the banjo jingle. Right now, we are 147 pages into it, which oddly enough, what's today's date? In the book, it's broken down by date, and September 16th is the date I'm on right now in the book, and that is today's date. And then from there, I have a bunch of books that we're looking to read. Maybe we'll go with Marketing Artificial Intelligence. I don't think that's going to be one that we'll highlight on the channel, but I am excited to read this one when I get the chance. Last week was extremely busy. That's where I got that book last week. I was at an AI conference presenting. So that's why this video took so long to come out to you. I hope you enjoy it. I hope these book conversations go over well and you learn something or you're encouraged to pick up a book. Till next time, have a good one.
Do 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 do.